Good morning. Happy Wednesday. This is the Pitch Strike Chronicles. I'm Uncle Tats. I'm here with Rob and Donald, as always. And, man, yes, last night sucked. It really sucked. You know, we were in a rhythm where we were going into games with at least a little bit of optimism, you know, that they were going to be playing competitively. You know, even though results may vary, it is baseball. But with Clark Schmidt on the mound, we've been able to have a little more optimism because he has been pitching very well. And it just sucks against the Blue Jays, who were trying to spoil their playoff hopes. That was when he had a little hiccup yesterday, and it was not so much frustrating, but I'd say disappointing. He's been trying to focus on having cleaner innings, quicker innings, and they were working his count. He was having trouble putting batters away. I'm not concerned about Schmidt in that regard. I don't think it's something that's going to spiral where he's just not going to be able to find himself. But I just think the timing is this is what we're going to get when we're playing the playoff caliber teams. We're going to fall short. The offense is going to struggle. This is something that we've been preparing for this mentally pretty much all season since everything went off the rails, and we were not a playoff caliber team, not even a championship caliber team, like our owner thinks or our GM thinks. So if you take a step back and you look, it was a tough game to watch or listen to, or however you take in the game. But they just don't have. They took a step backwards yesterday, and that's kind of. I really hope that they pick this up today, and they kind of get back on track and at least make it a little interesting. Because even though for a long time during the game it was close, it didn't feel like a close game. It just it felt like we never had control of it. Donald, what was your take on last night?
I think it's just another reminder that we're not at the Blue Jays level. They're just a better team, no matter the prospects that we're bringing up and things like that. We've still got work to do to even up. The Blue Jays have put a lot of money into this team. So have the Yankees, but the Yankees have misallocated their funds significantly. We all know that. Blue Jays have put together a pretty good roster, and they're still very much in the hunt. They're just a better team, and there's not a lot that can be done. I mean, Schmidt, 5 innings, 4 runs is not the end of the world. It's not good, not great, but it's not the end of the world. Like, on another day, maybe with a better offense, it's where he's actually keeping us in the game. It just shows that there's a gap between the two teams now. There is, and the Yankees have to make it up in the offseason. Well, there's a gap between us and the Orioles, a significant gap. The Rays and the Jays. The Yankees have a lot of work to do in the offseason. It's still positive. I still think that with a couple of smart moves, the Yankees can certainly address some of these areas where they're significantly weaker than the other teams in the East. But I'm not looking too deeply into this game. I think that it was always foolhardy to think that the Yankees were going to make a playoff run. They're not there yet. And this is just another reminder that there's some work to do. Defense didn't help. A couple of errors, one that led to a run. It's just one of those growing pains for this young Yankee roster.
Yeah, it's Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, we can't really put too much stock into this game. We're not a good team. Offensively, we're terrible. Clark Schmidt wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great, like Donald said. So you really you can't put a lot on his start necessarily, but you can just point at the offense once again. And you're scoring 1 run a game, you're not going to win a lot of baseball games. So, and another, like you just said, Donald. And if we had a better offense, if we were more consistent, maybe a starter going 5, giving up 4, we can come back from that. But on a night like that or a season like this where the second worst team in batting average, one of the worst teams in overall numbers except for home runs, or one of the worst offenses in all of baseball, and we get no hit a lot, we no hit for like 50% of our innings. Just one run, that ain't going to cut it, especially after just the first inning, you didn't score. So that really kind of exemplifies what our offense is. They might put a run or two across the board early or scatter it, but there's days where we look really good. There's days like yesterday where they could have given up 15, and we've lost a couple of games where we've given up 15 runs. So it doesn't matter when your offense can't score. So it just sucks that we had a chance to maybe play a little spoiler and they came out flat, but we'll see if they can try to salvage something in the series.
Yeah, I think salvage is really the only word left for this season. Just not even salvage the season, but salvage our hopes for next year. Give us something, play to a level where we can look forward to things to come in 2024. It's not about the veterans at this point. Like, we know Judge is going to be fine. Like, Judge is not the problem. Torres still has that cloud over him of if he's staying or going. I think either way, I don't think anybody can really complain if they decide to keep him. It is what it is. If they move on from him, it is what it is. One of those situations. But
let's jump on that because we haven't really discussed it. Right. Torres is basically leading. He's either leading or he's second in the American League in basically every category. Offensive. So he's basically one of the top second basemen in the American League without a doubt, first or second, all across the board and basically every metric. Do the Yankees re-sign him? Let's start with Rob.
Everything tells you they should, but I can also see a scenario where they try to save some money and move him, because in arbitration he might get, based off of this year alone, he might want like 13 or something $13 million. And the Yankees are going to be going heavily for Yamamoto. They're going to be going heavily for an outfielder. So knowing they have Peraza, they still have DJ, who's not going to be moved. They still have Stanton's money that's not going to be moved. And the fact that they can replace Torres, hopefully with a DJ LeMahieu playing like this and into next season, that'll be nice. And they have a whole bunch of infielders still coming up through the system. Arias is going to be a couple of years away. They just drafted another shortstop and another second baseman in Lombard and Rizzo. So Torres, would I like for him to be back? Absolutely. But could I see a scenario where they trade him while his value is even higher now, even on a 1 year? I could see that happening. And this might be, I still think the time to do it was this trade deadline, because we know a team in Miami wanted him. Miami could still want him, but you're probably going to get a lot less than what you could have at the deadline. So I wouldn't complain if he's brought back, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's traded. But you look at just the numbers alone, you think the Yankees would be crazy to move him. But at the same time, you can see the scenario where they do move him simply because they probably don't want to pay him when they have 800 infielders in their system.
Uncle T?
I'm 60-40 on Gleyber at this point, right? And 60% of me wants to keep him. And one of the key things that swayed the vote for me is his health. The dude stays healthy. And that's been a big problem on our club, is nobody's been able to consistently stay healthy for a period of time. Torres has been that guy, and nobody gives him that. It's always about, his defensive metrics might not be at the top of the class. Okay. He's going to have some, his base running IQ, not the best. But if he was to up his base running, right, and just really go sprint and became an injury prone player, we'd be screaming, what are you doing? He stays in his lane. He knows his ability. He knows it. He understands his body. He knows what his body can handle and what it can't. So if he's not going to be a top speed guy, that's okay. He can't be a dunce on the base paths. We've seen that too often. I'm not saying it's not his fault. I also think that he could be a late bloomer. As far as putting everything together. Not everybody's going to figure it out at 21, 22 years old. We've seen players where it's like, where has this guy been all these years? And it just clicks and everything just falls into place. Gleyber could be that guy. If the money's right, I would keep him. If the right trade comes along in the offseason, you can move on from him. But unless he's getting traded where you're getting something in return, you can't just let him go. That's how I feel about it.
I'm keeping his defense out of it because I'm not happy with his defense. I think he's lazy on defense. I've said this a number of times. I think he is. But on offense, he is the Yankees' best player in terms of all season long. I mean, obviously Aaron Judge, we don't know about Aaron Judge, but in terms of all season long, he's been our most consistent bat, and there's not even a question about it. And I'm going to go through where he ranks among qualified AL second basemen, and this comes from Twitter account at @NewYork_Evil Empire. Shout out to him for this. Gleyber Torres ranking amongst qualified AL second basemen. OBP, he's second. OPS, he's second. Home runs, he's first. Runs, he's second. Strikeouts, he's only second. That's pretty damn good. Walk percentage, he's first. WRC plus, he's first. F-WAR, he's second. Batting average, he's third. That's qualifying amongst AL second basemen. So basically, right across the board, he's either the best or the second best second baseman in the American League. That's hard to replace. That is very hard to replace. That kind of production, with Tat's point there that he's healthy, considering this is the most injury-prone roster. This is also a guy who's in the right side of 30. He's still in his prime. He's still got enough years on his prime left that he can get even better. So he's at the right age. He's healthy, and he's either the first or the second best second baseman in the American League in terms of offense. Defense, I don't like his approach at times. I think he's lazy at times. I don't think he gets his glove down quick enough at times. I think he has this lazy approach, this laissez-faire approach to getting to the ball at time, ground balls. And we know about his base running issues. That's well documented. But considering where the Yankees have so many holes on this offense, can they afford to create a new one? Because you're then taking out, the best or the second best second baseman in the American League. In terms of the Yankees offense, he's our second best bat after Aaron Judge. Can you afford to take that out considering we have so many holes? We have at least two outfielders that you need, possibly a catcher, first base. We don't know what third base yet. There's a bunch of holes that need to be looked at. Can they afford to create a new one? That's my argument, which makes me more 70-30, even though at the start of the year, I was 100% Gleyber needs to get out of here. I'm done. But the more I think about it, the more I think it's actually wise that the Yankees just have to hold their nose a little bit with his defense and his base running and say, with that offense and with that bat, can they afford to lose it? I would say probably not. I think they should probably give him a reasonable deal that doesn't break the bank, that's movable, but certainly gives him a little bit of a pay rise and re-ups him for a couple more years anyway. I think that's the way to go. We'll see if their agent would be amenable to something like that. That's obviously a discussion for Cashman and his agents, but you go through his rankings on offense, I'm actually on board that they should probably keep him. But Everyone in the chat put a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Should we keep Glaber? Should we trade him? I'd be interested to see what everyone's opinions are on that. I'm thumbs up. Extend him. Rob?
I'm trading him. I love Glaber Torres, but
Okay.
I'm trading him. He's not shown consistency really. I feel like the perfect time to trade him is now. He's coming off like we've all said it. He's coming off a great year. Teams are going to want him, especially on a 1-year deal. And I don't see a scenario where the Yankees pay him. I just don't, because we know they want Yamamoto. We know they can't move some contracts. They're paying Judge. They're paying Cole. They're paying Rodon. There's that slim chance they go out and maybe Juan Soto becomes available in trade. Maybe they go out and try to get him. Or maybe they go after Lee in free agency when he gets posted. That's going to cost you a hefty price. So considering what Glaber is going to be making in arbitration, and potentially he could be a $15 to $20 million player per year, do they want to add that to another guy to the roster right now when they can get a second baseman on a rookie deal basically in Peraza? Or if it's not Peraza, maybe it's Arias. Or maybe Volpe goes over to second. Maybe he's a little bit better at second base, and they have one of these 8 shortstops in their system be the shortstop of the future. There's so many different ways they can go. That's why I think they should move him now, and I think they should have moved him at the deadline. It's not because I don't like him, and I know it's going to hurt, but we've also seen he can go on a hot streak and a cold streak at the drop of a dime. He's been red hot the entire second half of the season. That's probably the longest stretch of good play he's had for a while. And I think it's happening at the right time. So if a team like Miami says, hey, we'll give you Braxton Garrett for him and maybe another prospect or something, I think you pull the trigger, because the Yankees want to shore up that rotation, because we saw this year, even with the Cy Young season of Garrett Cole, nothing is certain. It's been Garrett Cole and question marks in the next 4 spots. The Yankees want to shore up that pitching, and I feel like they're going to be able to find a bat that can – if let's just say Juan Soto becomes available in trade. If you can go get Juan Soto and you move in Glaber Torres, your offense is replaced right there. It's a different position, of course, but you're getting more offense from Soto than you would from Torres. I'm just throwing it out there because I feel like he might be available, because San Diego's going down this really strange path where they've been so bad this year, and they might have to move some money. We don't know what they're going through yet. And I've seen a lot of people mentioning Juan Soto. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I feel like you can move Torres and you can replace him with other players that are going to be available in trades this offseason.
But when it comes with Torres, he's such a tricky, it's a tricky position to be in, because we've had times where we're like, we need some, we could absorb somebody with a weaker offense, if the defense is a plus. It's very rarely looked the other way around. Can you put up with some shady defense if you know you're going to get a solid at bat in your lineup every day? That's that balance that really needs to be examined this offseason, especially when you have such an inept offense. The offense has been our Achilles heel for years now. Everybody's always, during the playoff runs when we were actually competitive, it was always, well, we need to get it. We need an ace. We need an ace pitcher. We need an ace pitcher. We weren't getting blown out in games. It was the offense. We didn't have the offense for a big hit. Torres has become that, and I know Spencer brought it up in the chat earlier, but can he be consistent with it? That might be that risk of a question mark where you do pull the trigger and make a move. If Rob brought up Garrett, if that's the player that Miami wants to trade for him, along with a prospect pitcher, yeah, you have to. You'd be dumb not to make that move. And that's what really keeps this interesting. Is there's no right or wrong answer with Torres. If they trade him for the right piece, it's a good move. If they sign him and he keeps up this level and he stays healthy, you can't complain either.
Nope.
So. Donald,
Tats, where are you? Would you trade him or would you keep him right now?
I keep him. I want the offense. I can handle a couple of misplays at short. I'm not expecting Ricky Henderson on the bases, but we need that. We need that consistent at bat. So
and I also think that in terms of how can we project if he's going to keep this up next year, and I would argue with his walk percentage being first, and his strikeouts being second, and his OBP being second, that gives me a good feeling in the American League in terms of rankings. That gives me a good feeling that he's seeing the ball really well, and he's getting on base, and he isn't striking out. And we're looking at our roster. Our roster strikes out a ton. Everybody strikes out a ton. Torres is one of the only exceptions that doesn't do it, right? And I'm thinking, all right. And then a team that is bottom 5 in the whole of baseball in OBP, Gleyber Torres is the opposite. He actually does get on base, right? Him and Aaron Judge consistently get on base. The rest of the lineup can't get on base worth a shit, right? Bottom 5 in all of baseball in OBP. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, can we really afford to lose that OBP? Can we really afford to lose that base on ball percentage? Can we really afford to lose somebody that doesn't strike out, considering the whole roster strikes out, and that includes Aaron Judge? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, you know what? I don't think we can afford that. I think we just have to hold his nose with his laziness and his poor approach at second base at times and his poor base running. But goddamn that bat. You look at that batting average, 270. Who in this roster is batting close to 270? Apart from Aaron Judge. No one. Not even DJ LeMahieu, and he used to bat 340 in his sleep. A bad year, he was batting 330. Now he's 240. Can I really afford to lose a 270 batting average? I'm saying no. I'm saying extend him.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing, because like you can have both sides of it, because Deb's in there saying trade him. Other people have said don't trade him. And we've both done complete 180s, because at the start of the season, I said, I'm not trading Gleyber Torres. Now I'm saying trade him, because I feel like the Yankees can patch a couple of needs with him and still be able to
180 the other way.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's great how that works, and that we can have here, just have a conversation about it without trying to go at each other's throats. So it's great how that works. But I feel like there's so many other ways they can go in the infield. And we know that they need to get outfield help, and they're going to have to do that in the trade market, because the outfield market's very, very thin for free agency. Outside of Bellinger, there's really no game changer. So I keep bringing him up, but if San Diego puts Soto on the market, I'm going all in for him, and I'm gladly moving Gleyber Torres to another team for a pitcher, because that offense is going to get replaced. And I think Peraza can handle second base moving forward. And you have other infielders. They just drafted 2, like I mentioned. They signed Arias 2 years ago, and he's going to be a fast mover. They have prospects that could very well work out, and I just don't see a scenario where they pay Torres on top of already paying Judge and Cole, Stanton, Rodon, and possibly Yamamoto. Possibly. And if we do get Soto, they're going to pay him. So I just don't see a scenario where they're paying all these guys at once.
Here's another argument against trading him, and it would be in terms of the return. So if we were to trade him, people are saying we could get a pitcher back, right? But look at our rotation next year. Like let's say that the Yankees are going to go out for Yamamoto. I think they will, right? I think that's a likelihood that they maybe land him. Okay, so say you got him, you go Cole, you go Nestor Cortez, that's 3. You go Rodon, that's 4. You got King, who they're stretching out, and you got Clark Schmidt, that's 6 already. So when you think about that, are they really going to add more and more pitching? I don't think that pitching is necessarily a necessity. A closer, sure, but you're not going to trade Gleyber Torres for a closer. So that's where I'm at. I'm thinking, what kind of do we desperately need a pitcher? I would say if you get Yamamoto, no. So unless you get an outfielder and an infielder in the same trade, then then I don't know. That's where I'm at. I'm thinking, you know what? Like, what kind of return are you going to get, which is better than Gleyber Torres?
I don't see. I'm at that. You had said that most of his value was at the trade deadline. I actually think his value is at its peak now. Because it's like part of my argument of why I lean towards keep him is availability. That's I'm just not that I think fans don't pay attention. I'm just surprised that hasn't been part of the argument until now. Is that he stays healthy, because that's been the biggest issue for the Yankees offense is health. That's the problem. High strikeouts. I think that's the biggest value with Torres is his availability. I would trade. I would be able to handle a couple of mishaps on defense, then get rid of the bat. That's how. I think that's a not just because I said it, but I think that's a fair argument. But everybody has had a really fair breakdown on Torres. Like I said, there's no right answer here. There's no wrong answer. If he gets traded, we could see that. We could see the upside to it. If they keep him, we could see the upside to it. So that's where Gleyber gets into that really gray area. It started being brought up in the chat, and I'm going to bring up these names because NFE asked if we open to trading DJ or Rizzo. Let's get into that because I think that's interesting. Because LeMahieu would be the replacement for second base on Torres. Because I don't know if the young guys are seasoned enough to just jump into second base full time, whether it be Volpe or Peraza. So DJ would be Torres' replacement at second, which would really leave him unavailable to cover Rizzo if Rizzo gets hurt again. So now you're opening up another hole at first base. So there's this domino effect. But let's take DJ first, and then we'll get into Rizzo afterwards. What would you do with DJ?
I'll keep him. I'll keep him because I don't know what his value is, one, and two, what he's shown post All-Star break with better mechanics under Sean Casey. You're starting to see a better DJ LeMahieu. He's been pretty solid. I think he's much better at the top of the lineup than he is in the middle of the lineup. I hate him in the middle of the order because he doesn't have any kind of power worth of anything. So I prefer him near the top of the order where he could get on base. He's been getting on base at a better clip post All-Star break. He's seeing the ball better. He's hitting the ball better. He's going the other way, which he's struggled to do now. He strikes out far more than he's ever has in his career this year, which is obviously a problem. But I'm thinking with his versatility, he's somebody that can play third, he can play second, he can play first, and he doesn't necessarily need to play every day. Makes me think, you know what, that's a decent utility guy you can have, and a guy that you can solidly rely on. That's gonna give you some decent at bats. He's still a good hitter. He's not the hitter that he was. He's not the DJ LeMahieu who I got a jersey of because he was batting friggin' 340, 350 in his sleep. He ain't that guy anymore. But he's still somebody that can have an above-average bat and play very good defense at a number of positions. I think that's something that's worth keeping a hold of. And also, you look at his contract; it's fairly cheap. For someone who can play in numerous positions and give you an above-average bat plus good defense / Gold Glove defense for what, $15 million a year? That ain't bad. That's not a bad contract. I'm sorry, it isn't. So I keep him.
Yeah, no, yeah. He's not going to the Red Sox, but
he also has a no trade clause. A lot of people keep forgetting about that. So unless he's getting traded to a team that's going to win, like let's say the Dodgers come calling because the Dodgers could afford anybody they want. They also could use a third baseman next year. I don't know if Muncy's going to be back, but maybe Arizona. That's something that LI's mentioned constantly. Would he want to go there though? Would he want to go there? He wanted to be a Yankee. He took less money. It took the extra year, but it took less money to stay with the Yankees. He likes being here. I don't know if he's going to waive his no trade clause to go anywhere, and it's going to be difficult to salary dump a guy unless he accepts a trade. So, and for $15 million a year, you might want to hold on to him. Now, if you move him, then Gleyber Torres can easily get extended, so that kind of helps out right there. If you move DJ, then you go ahead and extend Gleyber. But I don't see if they do. I don't see them trading DJ because of that no trade. And and like Steve said, you're not getting a single thing for Anthony Rizzo. The Yankees screwed him up, and he's got a pretty bloated contract for one more year. At his age, with the concussion issues, you'd be lucky to get something for him. So the more likely one of those two is DJ, but at the same time, it's unlikely that any of them get moved simply because one has a no trade clause and the other one's value is plummeted. Now, a healthy Anthony Rizzo is going to be really good next year. He might hit 250, get you close to 30 bombs, drive in a bunch of runs, get on base, good OPS. His defense will be fine at first for one more year. That's great. But teams are going to look at that and be like, you guys let him play for 2 months with a concussion. How healthy is he? So there's really no chance you're trading him for anything of significant value. It'd just be a salary dump. And I don't think they want to do that to Rizzo because he's been pretty damn loyal since coming here. And I do feel like a healthy, knock on wood, he's healthy next year. He's going to be a fine player. And then you can replace him with maybe Murakami when he becomes available. Or maybe they go sign Bellinger and move him to first. Or DJ becomes your first baseman the final 2 years of his contract.
Do you see a situation with, let me get my thought, my last thought on with DJ. I think the contract, very team friendly to move, but it, like you said, Rob, it's going to come to him wanting to be traded. That's one of the things that I don't like about the no trade clauses in the contracts, because especially with players as they get older, it really puts everybody's back against the wall where there's no way out. And everybody's going to have, there's, it's just very painful in the contract. I was seeing that now with somebody like DJ, where if you didn't have the no trade clause or a limited no trade clause, at least it does keep that window open if you need to make a move. Now you're stuck. So, but if I had to be stuck, and if I had to be stuck with one player over another, I'd rather be stuck with DJ than Rizzo, because DJ at least is more available. He's had a healthier streak. He's been on the IL. He's gotten hurt. Everybody does. But with Rizzo's back, I think that's too much of a liability at first base, especially when you have to start, picking balls in the dirt, stretching, things like that. So I think Rizzo would be more of a liability defensively than LeMahieu. The thing with Rizzo, and I'll propose this question: do you decide in spring training to see if he's healthy, and if it's to that point where they're not going to play him? I think it was Talking Yanks brought this up on their show yesterday, but what do do you think that he's one of those guys that if he can't do it anymore, he retires? Do you see a situation like that?
I could. I mean,
he just seems that type of guy that he wouldn't want to hurt the team.
Right, but he also, everyone's got an ego. They never want to be like, I just can't handle it, because he's not a bad player. That's the thing. He's not. We know he can still play when he's healthy, but we're talking about a concussion and symptoms that have lingered on for months. So if it's still affecting him in March, then he needs to retire. Let's just be honest. If it gets to the point where we're in the new year, even if it's like February and we're getting ready to, have players report to spring training, if he still has some lingering issues, he can't play, because then you're risking life right there. So if that's the case, then yeah, he would retire. But if he says he's good to go and all the tests say he's good to go, I don't see why he wouldn't. But he would just retire. Now, if he goes into the spring and he's like, I can't see the ball, then he would. He'd probably retire. Yeah. But I'm just gonna be optimistic that it's not going to linger until February and March, and then he'll be ready to go. And that's another reason why you do keep LeMahieu, because you don't have a first baseman on the roster. Because I swear to God, if we have to have Jake Bauers play first base next year, I'm going to lose my mind.
No, I just think that would put the emphasis on getting Bellinger.
Right, but do you want to overpay for Bellinger? Because we're talking about 1 year things, right? A lot of people, right, because they're like, oh, go sign Bellinger. He's having a great year. Oh, but you can't trade Gleyber Torres because he's having a good year. People wanted to kick Gleyber to the curb after 2021. And Gleyber's had 2 good seasons. And I'd be perfectly fine with keeping him, but we're talking about Bellinger, who was just let go by the Dodgers. Dodgers can do whatever the hell they want, but they just let him go. They said, we can't keep you anymore. And he revitalized himself. And teams are going to overpay for him because it's Ohtani and him. And then Matt Chapman. And Chapman's at the age of 30. Bellinger's going to get a lot of money. A lot. I don't know if the Yankees pay for that. Now, if they need to, if you have to pick one of the two, Bellinger or Gleyber, who do you take? Because I think Bellinger's more of a fit for the stadium. But then you're adding more strikeouts to your lineup. So there's kind of a dip, but you also need an outfielder, and you might need a first baseman. So like, who's got the more value there? So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. Yeah, it's just like you keep opening up this wormhole of the offseason. I would pass on him too, Li. I would. I'm not saying I don't like him. I like Bellinger, and I would take him on this team. But considering what he's going to want for one good season, I think you can find that elsewhere. In a trade or in free agency, maybe even next season.
So here's where I'm at with Rizzo. I think the Yankees should be ashamed of themselves that they've put his career in jeopardy. They've completely mishandled him. They're playing 2-3 months with a concussion, risked his life and risked his livelihood. And they opened themselves up to a lawsuit. If I were Rizzo's agent, I certainly would be considering it. Sorry, truth. The Yankees completely screwed the pooch on this. And from what I've understand, I think a lot of Yankees are behind the scenes disgusted with the way that the front office dealt with Anthony Rizzo. I'm sure Aaron Judge especially, because they're best friends. So this has nothing to do with Anthony Rizzo, what I'm going to say. They needed to re-sign him at the time that they did because there was no first baseman on the market. It was a little bit of an overpay, but it was a decent deal at the time. And Rizzo was paying it back because he started off red hot. He was playing great. But then that freak collision has affected things. And from there, he couldn't see anything. And the Yankees were the reason for that because they kept, instead of looking after him and shutting him down, they had him play basically with one eye open. That's what it would be like if we were just going up with like an eye patch and we were trying to hit 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. That's basically what was going on because Rizzo couldn't see clearly. Disgraceful what the Yankees did. But we've been through that. I've talked about it numerous times. Brian Cashman should have been fired on the spot for the way that they treated him and the entire medical staff. But if I'm to look at, do we bring back Rizzo or DJ LeMahieu? I bring back LeMahieu before Rizzo because the Yankees need to get power from first base. Legitimate lockdown. I need 35, 40 home runs from first base if I'm going to make the Yankees a playoff team next year. Because there's so few positions that we have on our roster where you can lock down 40 home runs, 35, 40 home runs. Aaron Judge, that's it, in my opinion. Stanton would have been, but he can't stay healthy. So he's now down to about 25 home runs, right? So where am I going to get those extra home runs? I don't think Rizzo at his age at 35 is that guy, especially coming off a concussion. So obviously Rob is 100% right. You're not getting anything for Rizzo. Nothing. But he might retire, or I don't know what the Yankees choose to do. But first base would be my position where I look at an upgrade. a power upgrade that you can lock in someone younger. That's why it was a crazy, unacceptable, unbelievable that Brian Cashman didn't go out and get Olsen. That was the guy to get, because you want someone younger that can play in that stadium and rocket balls in the right field seats. That was the move to make.
He would have hit 50.
He would have hit 50 in his sleep. Could you imagine? It would have been like, oh my God, it would have been unbelievable. It would have been like Mantle and Maris. With like these dudes will be hitting 50 in their sleep, and that was the move to make. It was so easy. It was actually a no-brainer. Any GM with worth of salt would have done whatever it took to make that deal happen. Because you look at the Yankees, and they don't really have a first baseman in the minors. They don't really have it unless they make Spencer Jones a full-time first baseman. So I'm thinking, hey, if I need a position where I'm locking in a bunch of home runs, I think we need to get younger, and I don't know if it's Rizzo's that guy anymore. Maybe Bellinger is that guy for a year or two. Maybe you start already moving Spencer Jones to being a full-time first baseman so that he's ready and has an automatic spot when he's ready to go in the majors. But I'm thinking, hey, if there's these two positions, if there's a position there, I think I need an upgrade that's younger, that's guaranteed to give me power, I would look at first base and lock me in on that. So I would consider moving on from Rizzo, and it's not a disrespect from Rizzo. As I say, I'm a big fan of Rizzo. I love the guy. I think he's a perfect locker room guy. The Italian New York thing's a big thing. Great. Best friends of Aaron Judge. Great. Great defense. Great. Power. Excellent. Unfortunately, Brian Cashman and the training staff destroyed him. I'm not sure what he's going to come back as next year. And the Yankees can't afford to not know what's going to happen with first base. Can they really afford to go, are you going to be okay in March and April? And if it turns out he's not, and not have a backup? Because as we saw last year, the Yankees didn't have a left fielder, right? And they were planning and hoping that maybe it would be magically, a trade would magically come alive at some point in April and May that they could have made, or whatever, something. An answer can be found. Sometimes it doesn't happen, right? Because once you get to March and April, the trade market's done, and a good player isn't going to become available. So can the Yankees afford to risk waiting to March and April without an answer at first base, or without knowing if Rizzo's going to be okay? So that's my answer to that. I would look for an upgrade at first.
That's why I think it's so difficult to move LeMahieu, because he's the backup, and after him it's Cabrera. Is Austin Wells going to be moved to first, because we have 800 catchers in the system as well? Maybe Ben Rice is legit, and he's a guy that can play first base. We don't really know. The Yankees have a bunch of catchers that are potential first basemen at the major league level. I still don't think they want to move Spencer Jones, because he's so fast for a guy his size, and he can play a really good outfield. Bellinger would make a lot of sense, but at the same time, and I know Steve, and he's striking out far less this year, but what happens when players come to the Yankees? Their strikeouts tick up. Even Joey Gallo struck out more with the Yankees, and I thought that was physically impossible, but that's just what guys do. That's what guys do when they come to the Yankees. They change their approach around. So and LI's bringing up Gavin Sheets here. I brought him up a couple of times earlier in the season. I brought him up. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but the thing is, the Yankees have to. This is the most important offseason in the team's history, at least of this generation. This is probably since the 08 offseason. The first time they missed the playoffs in the last year of the old stadium. That offseason was so important because they had to make a statement, and they did. But this is this is probably the most important offseason, at least in the last 15 years, because the Yankees have to change so many things, not just with the roster, but with the front office. They have to change so much. Analytical department, the health, the training staff, so much has to get done. Is it going to get done? I don't know if there's enough time, but there's a lot that needs to get done. There's a lot of things they have to look at. So they might have to make some tough decisions. Hey, look, Stanton, and I know L.I. brought it up with a hot take saying if he goes to the Dodgers, they would fix him. I don't think that's a hot take. I fully expect that to happen. If he goes to L.A., they will find a way to get Stanton back on track because they probably have a better system in place for keeping players healthy. I know they've had some pitching issues, but I feel like if Stanton goes to LA, he would be a much better player. Probably because they'd find a way to keep him healthy. Because that's just what happens when players leave. Some players leave the Yankees. But there's going to be some tough decisions. And there's going to be a lot of work. A lot of work needs to be done. That's why I think it's the most important offseason in history of this team.
Yeah.
Facts.
Part of it was also being, we've been talking a lot about with the rotation, shit like that. I want to bring up one last player to break down. And that was CC Sabathia's comments that the Yankees should keep Severino on this rotation, despite his health issues. I've always been a fan of CC. I always respected his takes, but I think he's off on this one. I don't think the Yankees can afford to pay a pitcher that you cannot rely on. He's been with us. We've seen it firsthand. He's just not able to stay healthy. I'm not putting that kind of money into a starting pitcher where we have the pieces to trade for more reliable arms. So when give me your opinion on CC's comment that the Yankees would really they need to keep Severino.
I would say that no, but I see his point because he's probably looking at value and he's thinking, you know what, his value is going to be low. You could maybe get him, and then if you can get his ERA under 4, it's a win. If you get a cheap contract, and there's certainly scope there. But I've said this for a couple of years. I think Severino is a closer / setup guy. I think if you have him in a position where his overpowering fastball and the nice movement that he has in his secondary pitches, that's something that could translate well in a setup role / closer role. But his agent, and he is never going to allow that. I don't think Severino will allow that to happen. So I think that he'll always be a starter. But I think with his health and the fact that you can't really trust that he's going to give you consistent outings every 5 days, I think you move on from him. But I do see his point, CC's point, that you could probably get good value for him at the moment where, no one's going to give him much of a contract and the Yankees maybe take a flyer and then, hey, he's got that arm where he can give you a 3.50 ERA with a ton of strikeouts and he'd be pretty damn happy. But I just can't rely on that. I think I've said it a million times. I think he's a closer / setup man, and that's how I would approach it in the offseason.
Now, if he's not coming back as a bullpen guy, that'd be the only way that I open the door a crack to let him come back. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, and even then, you have so many guys that are like hybrid starter relievers, because I can easily see Michael King being back to the bullpen next year. Same thing with Clark Schmidt. And I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Yankees sold high on both of those guys because, Yankees are going to have to, like we mentioned, they're going to make a fuck ton of moves to get this roster back. And it could take some tough pills to swallow. But I mentioned Drew Thorpe. He's coming up the system. They have pitchers coming up. We know they're interested in starting pitching. There's no reason Sevy should be here next year. And I love Severino to death. He's one of my favorite players I've ever watched. I love him. I always want him to be the best homegrown Yankee pitcher because I thought he really could have been. His stuff was that good. But it's time to move on. He's been hurt every single year since 2018. And that was his best season, but he was hurt for the second half. He got hurt the following year. Hurt. This year, again, he's gotten hurt several times, and he was really bad this year. When he was supposedly healthy, he was bad. And I would rather take a flyer on Montas than Sevy at this point, because at least with Montas, he's younger. He hasn't had that many injuries compared to Sevy. I don't know if Sevy's career is over. If he does come back as a bullpen guy, fine, give it a shot, because I feel like Matt Blake can turn him into an absolutely lights out setup man or a closer, or even middle relief guy that can give you 2 innings. But Johnny Brito's already shown you that ability. He can be the new Michael King. So do you really need Severino at this point? I don't know. I think Severino's best best opportunity to revitalize his career is elsewhere. Maybe a team like Pittsburgh takes a flyer on him. They're on the up and coming. He'd fly under the radar there, that if he has a really good season next year with Pittsburgh, everyone's going to be happy for him, but realize it's time to move on from him here because it just hasn't worked out. And it's not because he's a bad pitcher, it's because he can't stay healthy. And sometimes you just got to be like, look, we tried. We really tried. They picked up his option immediately this offseason. Hal Steinbrenner said it wasn't even a question. That's how much they wanted him back. And it just, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And he was really, really bad. So change of scenery is probably best for him. I think he's going to be 30, 31. There's still a chance to get another good 4 or 5 years, maybe max 5 years elsewhere. I think it's time for him to move on. It's time for the Yankees to move on.
One thing we haven't done today is we haven't done the roll call yet. We got to get the roll call. We got to get a shout out to everyone in the chat. Let's get moving on this. Elliot, Spencer, my guy, what is up? Montas, I never even think of that guy. Yeah, me neither. NFE, the Cardinals keep pitching. LI Yankee King, and Montas is a year older than Sevy. LI Yankee King also says this offseason they have to tell Cole they want to go with a 6-man rotation because Cole's getting into his mid-30s. I want to keep him healthy as he gets into his later career. Well, the thing is about Garrett Cole, he's a creature of habit. He needs to be – I think he likes to get in a routine where he's ready every 5 days. He's very much a creature of habit, and it's working for him. I ain't upsetting that rhythm. Considering what he's doing this year, I'm changing nothing about Garrett Cole and his regime, his workout regimen behind the scenes. Steve Schumann, really disagree, Rob, about moving King. If you actually watched any of his starts, multiple weapons. Rob, what do you think?
I'm not saying they should move him, but I'm saying they could move him because we don't know what he is. He could be really good right now, and then he goes into the spring, gets lit up. And what if he has a Clark Schmidt type start to the season next year? They're going to move him right back to the bullpen. They're not going to keep throwing him out there because the Yankees at this time in May of next year, they're going to have a lot more guys that are ready to come up and take that rotation spot. I think this could be a good time to move on because the Cardinals, someone who I forgot who exactly mentioned it, the Cardinals do need pitching. And the Cardinals have a couple of guys the Yankees could use in Tommy Edman and Brendan Donovan. Those would be two guys that they could easily – one of those two, and I'd move a couple of pitchers to get one of those guys. I love Donovan. I love Tommy Edman. So if you can sell high on a couple of these guys we have, you might have to do it because Drew Thorpe's coming up soon. He's going to be here soon, and the Yankees are not moving him. I can guarantee you that. There's no chance they move Drew Thorpe. And they have a couple of pitchers they're excited about. So,
as Eli says here, the only way I bring back Sevy is if Thorpe's non-throwing arm is that hurt, but Thorpe is healthy. He's Sevy replacement. Patsu says, with the way the Yankees effed up this season and cost us this season, I believe we're in for a big surprise for the best of 2024. NFE says, love CC, but I strongly disagree with him. Yeah, I think that's the consensus there. NFE also says they went to Brian Reynolds before the season. Well, they should have got him because now Reynolds is, 8-year deal plus an option? He's locked in Pittsburgh for a while unless Pittsburgh chooses to move him. But with that contract that he's got now, 7-8 years, it's gonna cost a fortune in prospects to even pry him away from Pittsburgh. Even more than it was last offseason. So the Yankees screwed the pooch on that as well as they normally do.
Just resign him when his contract ends.
I believe Rizzo will be fine next year. He loves playing for the Yankees. I don't think he wants to leave, says Patsu. I don't think he wants to leave either. It's just what's the best for the Yankees. Medina says, Gleyber's value has been more high than it is now, which is why you trade him. Interesting. I admit, don't trade him for nothing. But no, I see what Medina is saying here, but it's tough to replace. FJ says in terms of the rotation, you can't be sure about Nestor. It depends on his iffy shoulder. That's true, but you can say that about a lot of our guys in our rotation.
That's our entire staff outside of Cole.
That's exactly, aside from Cole. What's Sunil saying? Torres should be a full-time DH, but the damn issue is emancipated because Stan is hogging the spot for everyone. Jonathan says, I would trade Torres because he has value and can be replaced. So I think the general consensus among the chat here, I'm not speaking for everyone, is that they probably would trade Torres. But what's Dev Finch saying? She's saying, what up, Tats Rob? Not everyone. Good to see everyone in the chat. Thanks so much for everyone that's commented and giving us your thoughts and views. It's fantastic. One thing, if you guys could do, tell a friend about us. It would be really appreciated, and try and get our subs up. Let's try and get some more subs up before the end of the regular season. That would be really, really cool. And let's see. Move Schmidt, sure. Agree on Thorpe. Perfect rotation. Cole, Yamamoto, Rodon, King, Thorpe. Donald, the Pirates were asking for a bunch of prospects. Not sure who they were asking for, so the Yankees didn't commit. Well, the Yankees don't commit to anything. The Yankees didn't even commit to their prospects until September. So I'm sorry, I'm not giving the Yankees a pass on it.
The only name that leaked about with the trade for Reynolds was Volpe.
Yeah.
And it was rumored that Dominguez was asked for as well. So that's why
they also wanted pitching. They wanted a lot of pitching. That's what they wanted. Bobby Miller from the Dodgers. They wanted like 3 of the Texas top pitching prospects. We didn't have that. Drew Thorpe wasn't that guy at that time before the season. So maybe now, if the trade was, if Reynolds was going into next year wanting to be traded on the 2 years he had left originally, maybe then they'd explore it. But I still don't think they want to move Drew Thorpe. Plus, Reynolds hasn't really had an excellent season. Hasn't been as good as people thought. You know who's actually had a really good year that people laughed at me when I said go get him is Max Kepler.
But even though I would have made that move. That's good.
Dev, I want to say something for Dev here. Everyone praying for my grandpa in the hospital. He has heart problems. He is 86. Prayers up for Dev's grandfather in hospital. We all wish him a speedy recovery.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So, that's also going to wrap things up for us today. We will be back in a few days. We will be breaking down even more. Who knows what other headlines will be in the news for us to break down, what other players we'll discuss. But you know where to find us every morning. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. Sundays, 11 a.m. Monday nights at midnight with me and Sunil. But like Donald said, tell your friends to subscribe. Let's build this. Let's keep this community growing. Tell the stranger on the corner. I don't care, but let's get some more people into the family. Doors always open. Everybody's welcome. And as I always say, wear those pinstripes of pride and play hard.